Murray at Southern Art Gallery, and today in our Watercolor 101 classes we will be discussing palettes and the pros and the cons of each kind of palette. And I will show you my collection of palettes, and I think most watercolor artists have a collection of palettes, and what I like and don't like, and what works and what doesn't work. So with that, we'll begin, and I will show you. When I started watercolor some 30 years ago, this was one, now this isn't 30 years old, but this was one of the first palettes that I purchased. No, I don't know, I've probably had it for 20 years. And this palette, the wonderful thing about this palette is that it rotates, and it has 3 nice big mixing wells. I purchased this off an artist named Penny Soto's website. I'm not sure she sells them anymore. There is another company that sells a similar palette, and I'm sorry I don't recall the name of it, but I'll try to look that up for you. But you can, if you search palettes on the internet, it'll come up. But the problem that I used this palette for years. The problem that I had with this palette was I had so many colors that it was difficult to achieve harmony in a painting, because I would pick a green from over here and an orange from over here and a red from over here and a blue from over here. And as you can see, there are just so many choices that your paintings sometimes, when you use too many colors, your paintings look childlike and cartoonish. At least that was my experience. So I reserve this palette now for just special colors that, you know, I don't keep on my regular palettes. I know they're here, and that's what I use that for. So I don't use it as often as I could, but I still use the mixing wells on that palette. This is a palette that I purchased not too long ago. It was very inexpensive on, I believe, Jerry's. It was like $9 and something. This is a Paul McCormick palette. And the nice thing about this palette is it's very heavy. It does come with a lid. The other round palette also had a lid. The problem with this palette that I found is that it has these wells which pool the paint in the center, and as you can see, you end up with all your paint. It's hard to mix in this palette for me. You end up having to mix up here because you have the one color down in the center down there, and it has a limited amount of wells, as you can see, for actually putting your colors in. So I find that I don't use this palette. I save it for my basically my grays and my flesh tones, so that it's been designated for that, but I don't use this palette often. This is my very favorite palette. This is a palette, it's called a Quiller palette. Well, it's a Quiller palette, and it's the reason I like this palette so much, it is that it's set up like the color wheel, so that it's easy for you to find your colors on this color, you know, on this palette. It's not, you don't have to search your colors. You can also easily find the complements to the different colors by using this, and I use this palette every day. So I really like this. It's not that heavy. The plastic is not that heavy on this palette. It's a bit flimsy, but he also makes a porcelain palette, but it's quite expensive. This is my other palette. This is my second palette that I go to. There's a brush here and there. And this is a Robert Woods palette. It's also not real sturdy, but if you keep it in the studio, it's fine. And I like this palette because it has these slanted wells, and the wells are large. So, and it has a good mixing area. So I do use this palette a lot also. These are really neat little palettes. They are made by Magello, by Mission, and they are sealed. They have a little gasket around here, And these are ideal for if you're just new to watercolor and you really want to experiment and find out what you like. It has nice mixing wells. This actually comes out. That's a tray. And you can actually also mix in this area. And it's just a very well-made little plastic palette. I like the way the wells are set up. And I really like the fact that you can take it with you. This is perfect if you take classes. So I really like this palette a lot. Oh, before we get into more travel palettes, let me just show you this. This is the least expensive palette you can find. This is just a ceramic plate. Works beautifully. I use it all the time. It doesn't stain. That's the advantage of this. And also you could even put your colors around the edge of this. And if you don't know what kind of palette you want yet, you might just get a plate. This was $2 and something. You might just get one of these and play with it until you decide what you really want. So that's a wonderful, wonderful palette. This is a porcelain palette, which you can get. And the wonderful thing about porcelain is they don't stain and they're heavy and stable. That being said, you can't travel with them. But they're lovely little palettes, and many of the English painters use the deviled egg trays that you can buy at a thrift store, and they basically are laid out like this, and they're very inexpensive and they work beautifully. So there are lots of different options here. This is a travel palette that I got from Jackson's in the UK, Jackson's Art Supply. It was very inexpensive. I basically just ordered the palette itself, the metal tin, and I ordered the full pans and the half pans, and I just put my colors in here. Most of these colors, as you can see, are very shiny because they're mostly honey-based paints. I don't know how that's going to work taking it out traveling because honey-based paints don't dry hard. So I'm probably not going to take this anywhere that I have to store it like this. If I take it out, it's going to be kept pretty level just in case they do get really hot and melt, and they don't have a gasket like the other one does. So I would suggest if you're taking honey-based paints that you use the Magello palette. But we'll see how that goes. This is another metal palette. These are very inexpensive. You can get them on Amazon. This is Prima, made by Prima. And it's really just like the other one. It really has nice mixing wells. It has a nice lip right here so the paints just don't pour off. It sits level, which is very important when you're looking for a palette. You don't want it to flop down on either side. So basically I bought this, I think it was $12 on Amazon, 12 something. I bought it for the actual tin. Don't know what I'm going to do with the Prima colors yet. I'm probably going to ultimately replace this with my professional grade watercolors. But that's a very, very inexpensive way to get a travel palette. And lastly, this is a palette that I've had for many years that I never used. And this one, let me just show you what it looks like. This is made by Winsor Newton. The nice thing about this palette is it has a water container. It comes with a brush. This water container you can actually fill up, and it hooks somewhere on here. It actually hooks on like this so that you can actually hold it. It does have a ring on the back, so you can actually hold this in your hand. If I can't get the ring out, there it is. But you can actually hold it like this. This flips out, which is really nice. So you have these mixing areas. They're kind of not real strong. It's very lightweight, this little palette, which makes it very nice, but it's also expensive. And I don't think I would purchase this one if I was choosing one because there are way too many less expensive alternatives out there that are just as good. So That being said, it closes up. Oh, I don't have that. Just like that. And it's very compact and you can take it with you. So, those are the different palettes, the pros and cons of what I have, and I hope you found this helpful. And if so, please subscribe and look forward to additional videos that we'll be having on subjects that may be helpful to you as watercolorist. And thank you for joining me. Bye bye.